A mother's body was found on the cold floor of her own home. A woman who should have been cradling her newborn in a hospital bed was instead lying in a pool of her own blood. The child inside her never took her first breath. The man accused of pulling the trigger. The very person who helped create the life she was carrying. Why did this happen? What could make a man destroy his own family in an instant? Was it rage? Fear? Or something far more calculated? Her name was Tameisha Price. She was 34 years old. She had 2 sons who adored her. She was just days away from giving birth to her first daughter, Malaysia. But instead of holding her newborn in her arms, she was ambushed in her own home, her life stolen in a flash of gunfire. This is more than a crime story. It's a chilling look into how love turns deadly, how a mother's choice to protect her child became the reason she lost her own life, and how one decision, one refusal to give in, led to an unthinkable ending. This is the story of Tameisha Price. And this is the truth behind her final hours. Toledo, Ohio. A city that sees its share of crime, but nothing could have prepared the community for what happened on January 24, 2024. The home where Tameisha Price lived had once been filled with the sound of laughter, the warmth of family, and the quiet hum of a mother preparing for a new life. But on that cold January night, everything changed. Inside those walls, a tragedy unfolded that sent shockwaves far beyond the neighborhood. Tameisha Price was more than just a name in the headlines. She was a daughter, a mother, and a woman who embraced life with passion. At 34 years old, she was days away from giving birth to a baby girl. She had 2 sons, young men who saw her as their rock, their source of strength. She loved fashion, travel, and capturing the beauty of life through photos and videos. But her greatest pride was being a mother. This baby, Malaysia Price, was supposed to complete their family. But she never got the chance. Paris James. The man who once stood beside Tameisha, who was supposed to be a father to their child. On the surface, they were a couple preparing to welcome a baby. But beneath that image, there were cracks, deep ones. Paris didn't want this child. And when Tameisha refused to end the pregnancy, what should have been a moment of joy became a battle of control, power, and, ultimately, life and death. And then, there was Jerry Scott. A name that would soon become tied to this tragedy. A man whose involvement remains a critical part of the story, one that would later unravel in a courtroom. And Shatouya Triplet, a woman accused of helping Paris cover his tracks, giving him an alibi in an attempt to distance him from what had been done. On the morning of January 24th, the quiet of the neighborhood was shattered. A mother, gone. An unborn baby, silenced before she could cry her first tears. The community was left in shock. Who could do this? Why would someone take the life of a woman so close to bringing another into the world? And how deep did the deception truly run? To understand how Tameisha Price's life was stolen, we have to go back. Back to the moments before the gunfire. Back to the choices that led her to that house, to that relationship, to the very moment where everything would come undone. For those who knew Tameisha, the news of her murder didn't just bring grief, it brought confusion. How could this happen? Why would someone want her dead? But those closest to her had a chilling realization: the answer had been there all along, hidden in the growing tension between her and Paris James. Tameisha and Paris had been together for a while, but by the time she became pregnant, cracks had already started to show. Paris, 35 years old, had a different vision for his life. He wasn't ready for another child. Friends would later recall how their arguments became more frequent, how Tameisha's excitement about her baby was often met with silence, or worse, resentment. The pregnancy became a dividing line. While Tameisha was preparing for a new beginning, Paris saw it as an ending, an end to his freedom, an end to the control he once had over her. There were warning signs. Whispers from friends who said they had seen Paris growing more distant, more frustrated. Tameisha, always strong-willed, wasn't going to be pressured into doing something she didn't believe in. She made it clear, she was keeping her daughter. And that decision set everything into motion. As Tameisha's due date approached, Paris' behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would disappear for hours, sometimes days. He avoided conversations about the baby, about the future. And then, there were the threats, not loud, not direct, but chilling all the same. This baby's gonna ruin everything. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. You'll regret this. To those on the outside, these words might have seemed like empty frustration. But for Tameisha, they became something else entirely, warnings she couldn't afford to ignore. She confided in friends, expressing concerns but brushing them off just as quickly. Paris was upset, she knew that. But she never believed he would act on his anger. After all, this was his child too. Wasn't it? January 23, 2024. The last full day of Tameisha Price's life. Surveillance footage captured her at a local store, buying baby clothes and a small pink blanket. A final gesture of love for the child she would never get to hold. Later that night, she sent a message to a close friend, "Almost time. I can't wait to meet her." But as she prepared for a new beginning, Paris was preparing for something else entirely. Phone records later showed that Paris had been in contact with Jerry Scott multiple times that night. Their conversations were short, but the timing was suspicious, just hours before Tameisha was found dead. What were they discussing? What was being planned? Then, the final call. At 2:37 a.m., Paris called Tameisha. We may never know exactly what was said in that conversation, but what we do know is this: by 3:15 a.m., the gunshots had been fired. And by the time the sun rose over Toledo, a mother and her unborn child were gone. The morning of January 24, 2024, began like any other in Toledo, Ohio. But as dawn broke, a chilling discovery shattered the calm. Tameisha Price, 34 years old and 38 weeks pregnant, was found lifeless in her home, the victim of multiple gunshot wounds. The life of her unborn daughter, Malaysia Price, was also tragically extinguished before it could begin. Responding officers arrived at the residence on Norton Place to a scene of unspeakable tragedy. Tameisha lay motionless, evidence of a violent struggle surrounding her. The home, once a sanctuary, had become a grim testament to a heinous act. Detectives from the Toledo Police Department immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. Interviews with neighbors and family members painted a picture of a woman excitedly preparing for her daughter's imminent arrival. However, beneath this anticipation lurked a troubling narrative of domestic discord. Attention quickly turned to Paris James, Tameisha's 35-year-old boyfriend and the father of her unborn child. Witnesses recounted escalating tensions between the couple, primarily centered around the pregnancy. James had reportedly expressed reluctance about the impending birth, leading to frequent arguments. On February 29, 2024, after a month-long investigation, authorities arrested Paris James, charging him with 2 counts of premeditated aggravated murder for the deaths of Tameisha and her unborn child. Alongside James, 2 others were implicated: Jerry Scott, 26, charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder premeditated, and Shatuya Triplett, 34, charged with obstructing justice for allegedly providing a false alibi for James. As the investigation unfolded, critical evidence came to light. Phone records indicated multiple communications between James and Scott on the night of the murder, suggesting coordination. Additionally, forensic analysis revealed a DNA match on the firearm recovered at the scene, linking it directly to James. This pivotal discovery led to a postponement of the trial, as the defense sought time to reassess their strategy in light of the new evidence. The brutal slaying of Tameisha Price and her unborn daughter sent shockwaves through the Toledo community. Vigils were held, with residents expressing grief and outrage over the senseless loss. Advocacy groups rallied, calling attention to the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the urgent need for protective measures for vulnerable individuals. The case proceeded to trial, with prosecutors presenting a compelling narrative of premeditation and betrayal. They argued that James, unwilling to embrace fatherhood, conspired with Scott to eliminate Tameisha and her unborn child. The defense, however, contested the allegations, challenging the credibility of the evidence and the motivations of the witnesses. After a grueling trial, the jury rendered a verdict. Paris James was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Jerry Scott received a similar sentence, while Chatouilla Triplet was convicted of obstructing justice and received a lesser sentence. In the wake of the trial, Tameisha's family sought to honor her memory by establishing a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence. The community, though scarred by the tragedy, united in efforts to prevent such horrors from recurring, fostering a renewed commitment to vigilance and compassion. The tragic deaths of Tameisha Price and her unborn daughter, Malaysia Price, left an indelible mark on the Toledo community. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the community grappled with grief, seeking justice and understanding in the face of such profound loss. In March 2024, the suspects involved in Tameisha's murder were indicted on multiple charges, including aggravated murder. The indictments were a critical step toward justice, reflecting the severity of the crime and the commitment of law enforcement to hold those responsible accountable. As the trial approached, new evidence emerged, leading to a postponement. DNA analysis revealed the presence of another man's DNA on the murder weapon, prompting further investigation and adjustments in the legal strategies of both the prosecution and defense. The Toledo community responded to the tragedy with an outpouring of support for Tameisha's family. Vigils and memorials were held to honor her memory, and discussions about domestic violence and its devastating consequences gained prominence. Organizations like Bethany House Toledo's Silent Witness Project aimed to remember women murdered in acts of domestic violence, raising awareness and advocating for change. To assist with funeral expenses and support Tameisha's surviving children, a GoFundMe campaign was launched, highlighting her loving nature and the profound impact she had on those around her. The case underscored the critical need for resources and support systems for individuals facing domestic violence. Community leaders and organizations intensified efforts to provide assistance, education, and preventive measures to ensure such tragedies are prevented in the future. Tameisha Price was a mother, a daughter, a friend. She was days away from welcoming her baby girl into the world when her life was stolen. This case isn't just a tragedy, it's a stark reminder of the dangers many women face behind closed doors. And the question remains, could this have been prevented? What do you think? Was justice truly served in this case? Should there be stronger protections for women facing domestic violence? Let's keep this conversation going in the comments below. Your voice matters. If you found this story important, hit the like button. It helps bring awareness to cases like these. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the cases that need to be told. Share this video with friends and family to spread awareness about domestic violence and its devastating consequences. Tameisha's story deserves to be remembered, and her daughter, Malaysia, deserved a chance at life. Let's make sure their names aren't forgotten.